Hello and welcome to 60 Seconds with Sergio. I am your host, Sergio Cabanas, attorney at law here in Florida. Thank you for joining me today. Today's question is, Sergio, I've already finalized my divorce. However, my spouse is not fully complying with our divorce arrangement. Is there anything I can do? The best way of answering that question is to backtrack a little bit to see exactly what it is that the spouse is failing to comply with. That often involves looking at the underlying divorce itself. Usually, the parties, if they enter into some kind of agreement as part of the divorce process, they would have signed what's called a marital settlement agreement. And if they did, the judge would review that final settlement agreement and incorporate it into what's called a final judgment of divorce. That's what makes that agreement legally enforceable thereafter. In those cases where the parties were not able to reach any kind of agreement in the underlying divorce, the case would likely have resulted in some type of a court hearing where the judge issues a final judgment. So, when we seek to enforce whatever happened in the divorce, we look first at whether there was a final settlement agreement, or what's called a marital settlement agreement, and a final judgment that incorporated the terms and conditions of that agreement, or the terms and conditions of the final judgment itself. That's how we determine whether or not the other spouse is fully complying with the terms and conditions of the divorce. So, now that we know what we're seeking to enforce in the underlying divorce, we can then look at whether or not there's a violation. Well, what kind of a violation could there be? There could be instances where one spouse is not complying with a final settlement agreement and or a final judgment by not transferring assets. Like, for example, that spouse is refusing to sign a deed or transfer certain funds. Or that spouse may not be paying child support or alimony that was already agreed to or ordered by the court. So depending on the circumstances, we could seek to look at the underlying agreement and or the final judgment that's being violated, and we file a motion for enforcement and contempt for whatever the violation may be. So there's normally 5 steps to all of this. The first step, of course, would include our review of the marital settlement agreement and or the final judgment to comb out exactly what terms and conditions are being violated. The best practice is to reach out to the other side to try to negotiate the enforcement as soon as possible, or explain what would happen if that other spouse does not comply. Of course, by negotiating, you might resolve the issue by simply explaining that you're ready to move forward to enforce and explaining the consequences if they do not comply. And if you're not able to resolve, that's okay. You can still show the court that you made a good faith effort to resolve the issue and the other side is not being reasonable. Step 3, we would file the motion to enforce. We would also include the recovery of attorney's fees because, after all, our position would be, depending on the circumstances, that there was already a court order in place and the other side violated it. That's forcing you to incur all the time, costs, and attorney's fees to enforce it when that person should have complied to begin with. Sometimes, depending on the judge, they may award the recovery of attorney's fees. Step 4. We would then proceed with having a hearing before the judge, explaining the circumstances, including the violation, again emphasizing the recovery of attorney's fees. Assuming we prevail on the motion, the judge would then issue what's called a court order, granting our motion to enforce. Now, by this point, we would hope that the other side has come to realize that they should comply with the court order. If not, we can go back and seek additional relief depending on the circumstances, and the judge can get nastier and nastier each time we go back, explaining that the other side is failing to comply. Finally, I would like to strongly suggest that you consult with an attorney before moving forward with any type of motion to enforce. This is serious business. After all, we're going to court to seek damages and sanctions and penalties against a person who may not be complying with the court order. You have to have the facts straight. You have to have the court orders in place. Otherwise, the judge may impose sanctions and penalties against you for forcing litigation on an issue that was not legally justified. I hope this short video provided you some guidance about enforcing court orders. Thank you for joining me today, and as always, stay informed so you can stay strong.